Hello everybody, welcome again to another Rewind Recall, and we're really going to be looking at a great one today. Each one of these shows seems to get better and better, and this one is USA number 7, show number 7. Obviously it was produced in 1988, and this one, Les, I think opens with a dark set, as we've had several different types of openings. We're kind of getting a feel for what we want to do as we're going along.
Right. Back
in that time frame of 1988. We had one that actually opened from a Coliseum. And I have a feeling that maybe next episode, number 8, because they're having this stampede on the night that we're doing this program is produced, that night there's a 16-man Cyclone Stampede in the Coliseum itself. And we'll be recording that, and I have a feeling that may open up the next week.
You know, an opening I always wanted to do and never got to, and I don't think I ever mentioned it to Phil. You mentioned it to Phil Rainey when we were in Southeastern. I wanted to open with a tight shot of Phil and I, right? And they could tell we were sitting in the grass, but they couldn't tell where. And as we're running down the show, the opening, they're panning back, and we're sitting in the middle of I-40 and I-75 at Malfunction Junction with all the traffic, you know, back when it was, so I thought this would be the coolest open in the friggin' world, right?
But it freaked some people out.
Yes,
sure,
it probably freaked us out trying to get out there.
It'd be better if you set up a ring out there.
Oh my God,
had a ring in there. Then you'd have had a lot of wrecks on that.
Did you ever, later on, did you ever try to run at the World Fairgrounds?
No, we never ran. I think somebody ran an event there, but it wasn't.
Lou Thez and I were doing the broadcast. He was my color man. It was Mario Savoldi. Why, I don't know, because, you know, they were based in New England, and I was always flying up there to do, you know, to do their shows. And all of a sudden they said, well, we're going to Knoxville. I said, what? And yeah, so he had the fairground. We did four shows.
Yeah,
at the fairgrounds.
So, you know, for people that don't know, the World's Fair came to Knoxville. I think it was maybe 1982, possibly.
No, it was Barnett. When did you sell to Barnett? Because he was
1970, 79.
Okay, so it was
1980. Might have been the 1980 World's Fair.
Because I remember he flew in. He had all the connections, and we didn't have to stand in line at the World's Fair because he asked me, said, "Have you been to the World's Fair?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, here's my plane schedule." Picked me up. He said, "We won't have to stand in line. I got connections."
Well, Jimsy had connections.
He did.
And I'm not surprised that he could get you tickets.
Yes. You see these long lines, and we'd go to the side of the building, and we had he had a golf cart too. We didn't walk that damn fair.
Oh, so see, yeah. I mean, you know, I remember in 1985 when I met David Von Erich. He got us tickets to Siegfried and Roy. You couldn't get tickets. Nobody could get tickets to Siegfried and Roy back in those days. And Jim came, I'm not buying. I've got something for you. You know, so, we got a good start today here. We're off to a little bit of a Jim Barnett story.
But, you know, for those who don't know, Jim Barnett owned, Barnett Doyle had a big promotion based out of Indianapolis for a number of years. Then Jim got into Atlanta, and when Ron got ready to sell the Southeastern out of Knoxville, Jim purchased that. So, and you worked with him in Australia too, didn't you?
Australia, yeah. Jim Barnett was one of the greatest promoters of all time. Ran a big part of the country, everything. He out to the west.
Well, you know what? He after I had worked Kansas City and Nebraska for Joe Doozy, right? And after I was back home and working in the Indianapolis office again, and he said, "How was Kansas City?" And I said, "Good." And I mentioned Joe Doocy really pays well, and he said, "Well, he should. It's partly my money he spent." Yeah. I thought, "Oops, I probably said the wrong thing."
He was involved in just about the entire country before he went to Australia. So anyway, on this one, which I thought was a really good show, I mean, like I said, the opening here, it did. And I want to just cover this in case people are seeing this and wondering what's going on. We've got a Southeastern Championship Wrestling t-shirt, and we've got a mask, a Tennessee stud mask.
And I've got some gifts here to show.
So later, once we finish this one, be sure and stay tuned because we're going to be talking about these things.
These are door prizes for a dinner with a stud at Calhoun's on the river on October the 13th.
So let's get back into the show here, and this show opened up, and which was a great crowd.
It was
a very loud crowd. I mean, they were very much into it. We're getting to the point where fans are really linking up with what we're trying to do, and they know who's heels, they know who's baby faces. They have started picking up the picture of what's going on. And the first match was J.D. Wolf, who was a pretty good worker.
He was, yeah.
Against
Dundee.
Bill Dundee. Actually, I think Bill Dundee was training these guys.
Yeah.
So, you know, Bill and this guy probably worked many, many hours with training.
Sure.
J.D. Wolf.
Well, you know, yeah, I was thinking too that when I watched this, that it's a good match. But then they've probably had this match a few times in a training ring.
In a training ring. They
Yeah.
probably had this match many, many times.
Yeah.
And what I liked about J.D. Wolf is he had a great heel attitude. I mean, he patted himself on the back at the beginning of the
Yeah.
show. He was just a great seller, and he really fed him well. He fed Dundee well. He was really a good job boy, a very, very good job boy. And obviously, he's going to be on a bunch of these shows.
Right.
Because Bill's going to continue to bring those good
Then
guys.
Gordon's got a promo coming up with Hector Guerrero, and they show a film of Hector against Danny Davis. And for those who don't, the Danny Davis you see here is the Danny Davis that ended up owning Ohio Valley Wrestling and who trained Brock Lesnar and Sheldon Benjamin and Randy Orton, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and he was for Continental Wrestling South. He was a nightmare.
Yeah.
One of the nightmares.
Yeah, right.
Danny Davis.
Danny's retired now.
A great little worker, and you know, and that was we've been doing a video of the week, and that was the video of the week for this week was Hector against Danny Davis, which was a great match, by the way.
It was.
And then Hector ends up cracking him, man, with his bullet belt. He had all those bullets.
The bandolier.
The bandolier. I mean, he really gave him a shot too with that thing on the end, and so. Probably wasn't too hard for Danny to sell that and actually get beat, you know.
Right.
So the first interview then obviously was Doug Furnace, Dundee.
For Hazard.
Cousin Junior, and it was for Hazard.
Right.
Hazard being one of the major, one of the largest cities in the southeastern part of Kentucky. And obviously we were running it on Saturday nights, you know, when we weren't running in Knoxville on a Saturday. So, that happened to be a Hazard week, and obviously this show was recorded for these commercials were cut from Hazard, and whoever recorded this show, I think Bo James may have recorded this show, and he recorded it off of a Hazard TV because he lived in Kingsport, Tennessee, and he could get that TV as well as the
So
TV.
the police, if they're trying to find who pirated this tape, it's Bo James, and you can find him in Kingsport, Tennessee.
Yes, so, you know, and I like Junior. Junior did a pretty decent interview on here. At the end of it, man, he really, he said, you know, he might end up getting the dog's bone before it was over because he was going to wrestle the dog. Actually, those two guys knew each other very well, and they had worked together. They're actually going to work together before it's all over as a team.
As a team,
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking too, watching this, back when I was a kid, first started watching wrestling, like say at age 9, and up through the 60s and the 70s, country wrestlers were a big deal. Don Marlin carried the Baby Pig, then the Scuffling Hillbillies, and Cousin Junior, and Cousin Alfred, you know, all the cousins. There were a million of them.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And I think part of it because pro wrestling was reaching a lot of the rural communities that major sports weren't hidden. So they were identifying with the rural, rural lifestyle.
It made sense, obviously, in that part of the country where we were with USA Wrestling, which was Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia,
West
Virginia. You know, to have yourself a Cousin Junior, have yourself one of those guys, and obviously it fit well for what we were doing. I wanted to mention after that first match, the replays. They had the slow-mo instant replay, but there was no sound on it. I mean, obviously, kind of like the music where when guys were coming in and they had to put crowd noise in there. They had to change the music. obviously they had to do. There was a problem with doing these replays for us, and so you're going to see the replay, but you won't hear any audio. Just so fans out there are wondering why nobody talking over this. There was originally when those shows were made. There was comments from Gordon Soley and I during that time frame. Next, I think on there was the second match.
Skyfighter 2.
Yep. Skyfighter 2, yes, against the Dog, and pretty much similar to the Dog's matches before. Starfighter got chunked out of the ring several times, and every time he did,
to the waiting arms of Wright and Stomper.
There you go. And Stomper wasn't doing too much, actually. He would just, grab him, and he'd give Wright a chance to work on him a little bit. And obviously, Wright knew how to get heat, and he liked to get as much as he could.
My question: who was the damn commissioner at this point?
Yeah.
Who could find this guy or suspend him or something?
Obviously, actually, the guy that we actually used as the commissioner is going to be seen on the very end of this program.
Okay, then I know.
And it was my business partner at the time, Bob Polk, who was also my hockey partner in all my hockey companies.
And after he got out of that business, he managed Chilhowie Park and the
Coliseum,
Civic Coliseum.
every one of the Knoxville city buildings.
Right.
He was responsible for managing all of those. So Bob had a great career. And
now that Lucky Devil's retired and playing with his grandchildren in New England.
Yes, he is, and good for him. So and then this is a little plug for by Gordon Soley about drugs and kids.
Yeah.
Kind of an odd little plug. But during that time frame, drugs were becoming a bigger problem in America. It's 1988, and they were doing this up in Gordon's territory down in Florida. And so Gordon, had just threw in that, which I thought was really good, because it was becoming a big problem in the country, all around the country, and it was a good thing for us to promote that you should say no to drugs, basically. And so then the personality profile with Landell,
and the film of Furnace versus Stomper.
Right.
With Landell's interference.
Landell's interference at the end, he jumps up on the apron, loads his glove, and that's...
And then the second film is Landell and Furnace.
Yes, and actually Furnace wins that match, and a Coliseum crowd was really into it. As you noticed, that crowd's still small.
Right.
Now, I believe in this next program, we're going to be in that night in which we have the Stampede, and I look for the next time we see videos from the Coliseum live, you're going to see a larger crowd. It's going to grow each one of these shows. It's going to get larger.
And you mentioned, too, you've got some bigger names. Coming in along the way.
Yeah, we're going to be starting to add some big names, and that's going to make it bigger as well. And then we're getting guys over, and we're getting some angles started, and then it was starting to happen. So then we have Bullet and the Party Boys. They do an interview then. I think that's next on there, and that interview is basically around the $32,000 Cyclone Stampede. That night. It was a generic interview that we used to do on Southeastern shows.
Right.
It was a plug for the Stampede, but it was not, they didn't say Knoxville.
Right.
They just said that we're going to be vying for $32,000 in that card. And, then came the pretty unusual event for a television show.
Sure.
This Cyclone Stampede. It's only 7 men.
A new guy in every 30 seconds because it was on the TV.
Because it was on TV, normally for the events in the arenas, it's every minute.
Right.
But because you're on TV, we don't know how long that match is going to last. Then we cut that time to 30 seconds, and actually ended maybe quicker than it was anticipated to end. But it still, I thought, was a tremendous match. The crowd was really
they were into it, and it was it's an organized brawl, basically what it amounts to, and with a new guy coming in, of course you don't know who that new guy is necessarily, and if you're by yourself and there's like a tag team in there with you, then you got to cover your back and your front.
Yeah, you're in real trouble. And as this thing went on, the way when they picked the numbers, which that's the way it was done in the regular Cyclone Stampedes, you pick your numbers out of a hat. One and two guys came out at the beginning of the stampede. It really showed what's going to happen in all of these stampedes. It kind of set the stage so that fans knew what to expect when they bought a ticket and went to the arena to watch it. Except in the arena, it's going to last a lot longer than 6 or 8, 10 minutes.
And this is basically a tease for those who have never seen something like this, and it's hopefully draws them to the buildings and where they buy tickets.
Yeah, and and as this thing went down, and the tickets got, the numbers started getting pulled, and it ended up with Scott Armstrong being number 1, and then he's got about 3 or 4 heels that end up getting 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's looking pretty bad for Scott when they start pulling those numbers, and then right on the very end, you finally get Davey with number 6 and Johnny with number 7. So Scott doesn't get any help basically for quite a while in this match.
And of course, the match runs long. And then there's a commercial break, which normally in an hour show you don't have a commercial break in the middle of a match.
And that match is continuing for fans that aren't there. That match doesn't stop when that commercial starts. They continued on for that 2 minutes, and then they come back, and obviously you find them in a different position. Maybe somebody's been eliminated or whatever might have happened. I don't think anybody got eliminated in that commercial. Then obviously they come out of the commercial, and the match continued on. And wow, this is a pretty wild match.
Yeah.
And
ended up Davey Ritchie comes out the winner of the thing, and of course he and partner and Scott Armstrong, they all excited because they're going to party with him.
Yeah, and I mean those boys had a lot of fire.
They did.
They really had a lot of fire.
Yeah.
They were young. They weren't the greatest workers. Davey, in particular, probably had not been working very long at all.
Right.
But Johnny and Scott had been, and just for people's information, going back a ways, in Southeastern in about 1984, Scott was just starting to wrestle, and they had a tag. They tagged up, and they were the Party Boys. They were the Rat Patrol.
Yeah.
And it was Johnny Rich and Scott Armstrong. And the son of one of the Samoans that ended up was a great young worker.
Alpha Seeker.
Alpha, I think it was Alpha's son. And he went on to be a star in WWE.
A lot of those guys, yes.
And what a great little team they had. They were the Rat Patrol back in those days.
You mentioned it. Now Johnny Rich was when I ran the tours in Ohio, Michigan, West Virginia for George Championship Wrestling in '82 and '83. He was on some of the tours in '83, so he was. I think didn't have that much experience then.
He was probably really green then.
Yeah,
and soon after that, he showed up in Southeastern just before it became Continental, and those guys did the Rat Patrol thing, which was a really, really great little gimmick down there in Southeastern. Wow, those guys were really good. It was a 3-man team, same concept as the Midnight Express, and as the Freebirds, as 3 guys. You never knew which 2 were going to be in the ring.
Right.
And worked out really, really good. And then you had then on the interview after the 4th interview was Ron Wright and the RPMs and
the Stomper and the Dog.
Yeah.
And I want to bring something up there, and you're going to see at the end that Mike Davis, one of the RPMs, just goes over the edge. I mean, he's in the camera screaming. He's not doing an interview. He's screaming like he's lost his mind. And the first thing I'm thinking is Gordon's going to cut him off at the knees right here. Going to say, we're going to break for commercial. We'll be back to wrap it up. But he didn't. And the reason I'm saying that, as being a commentator myself, is if Mike did his promos normally at a normal voice, like I'm talking now, right? But he's always yelling. And this was just so far, he was incoherent, he wasn't making any sense, and I thought, this is just crazy. And for me, if I'd have been holding the microphone, I'd have said, okay, we're out of here, we'll be back after this commercial. and shut him down. But
some guys, you know, and I think those guys were fairly young, fairly new. You know, they hadn't had a great deal of experience, and you know, some of those younger guys, they got into a habit. They wanted to scream every interview, no matter what it was about.
Yeah, and we've talked on this segment before, is that you're better to have an ebb and flow, peaks and valleys. So if this guy's screaming on promo number 2, then I want to talk more like this on promo number 3. Yeah. And you know, when Flair over in the Carolinas, when we had Flair and Greg Valentine teamed up, and you know how Flair is talk about over the top, that is Rick, right? And Greg was trying to follow, and I said, and Greg is normally a very low key guy who talks like this, you know. And I said to Greg, I said, don't do that. Stay at your own level. Why? Because the people got to sit forward or listen more intently because you're not screaming. You brought it down, so they got to pay more attention to you than they do to Rick. But then that's my only pick here. When everybody, Ron Wright is a screamer par excellence. You can't top him. So to me, everybody else needs to dummy it down a little bit. And instead, everybody's trying to get, you know, the kids, well, I got to be a big guy. I got to yell louder than he yelled. And it's not the case, actually.
So speaking of Ron Wright and being a screamer, so to speak, if you notice in all of his interviews, and lots of them, when he gets really fired up and he's really getting down, you got the dog and Stomper. They get right there in his ear almost, and they're making noises they're pushing him on. They're just wanting to drive him into being more insane. Which is great. I always like to watch that part of it because I got a feeling they were probably digging him in the back too at the same time, to make him go faster and harder.
You know why Whitey Caldwell used to do me when we sat behind the desk with Jim Hess years ago? He would pinch my skin on my thigh like that, right? And I had to try to keep a straight face and not scream. So but I know what you're saying. Yeah, Stomp. They're like, you know, they're getting more excited the more excited he gets.
So you know, basically after that interview with the Ron Wright and the dog and the Stomper, the Barney boys come back out.
Explain to the people watching why that cluster at the end.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know that the fans really consider that to be a cluster. They don't really know. But actually, because someone, instead of making 1 minute before each person came in, whoever rang the bell and had that responsibility, cut that time to 30 seconds. And I kind of covered for it at the end of the show by saying, because we're on TV, we couldn't do the 1 minute before having each guy enter. But anyway, that made the show run short. So what happened is the Party Boys went back out there, you know, to kill some time. And wow, they were fired up. They were really, really doing a great job of it. And then out came the RPMs again. And I think first came out was Ron Sexton, and then and the RPMs came. And then what happened is the close was nothing but a 3 or 4 minute fight that was just all over. They got back into the ring, and they ended up out of the ring. And it was just a back and forth all over.
But the idea was to fill that remaining minute and a half or 2 minutes, whatever it was.
Yeah, you couldn't close your show. Obviously, you had a 58 minutes, 50 seconds.
58:30, I think. 58:30 was
whatever that time was. And if you were short that time, what are you going to have? Black, you know, so
or run a bumper or something.
You would have a hard time. So what happened is that's a pretty decent close, considering that it was kind of a cluster there that things just screwed up at the very end of the show. And so you know, and then two referees came out in that last part, which was really good. Both referees, it was kind of mayhem. Referees trying to get it calmed down, a fight over, and then a guy it was my business partner with USA Wrestling, had been my business partner with all of my hockey teams, both hockey teams.
We broke him into business, actually.
Yes. You took me to his T-shirt the first time we ever saw him. Me and you had just gotten together again in Knoxville, just started Southeastern, and you said, I see this T-shirt store here.
Coach Boat's T-shirt shop.
Yeah, and he says, let's go in here. And we end up meeting a guy who's going to become, one of our best friends,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
also and highly involved.
Yeah.
And not only that, the USA and Continental.
Right.
He was involved in Continental. He was involved in USA. He was part of the Nashville Knights hockey
Cyclones
team, the
in Cincinnati. Yeah.
in Cincinnati. And he actually comes out in his little his white shirt and his bow tie, and tries to stop the fight at the very end. You know, basically, you know, guys, this is we're off the air.
Right.
You know, we don't need to do it anymore. And I was really glad to see Bobby in there. I hadn't seen him in many years, and to see him in there in that ring just brought back a lot of good memories.
And he was one of the more sane of the other group.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a regular human being.
Yeah.
You know, he'd never been in a ring.
In a straight life.
You know, yes. And so he was totally different. So, and I think that kind of covers this one. Next number 8, I predict that we're going to see maybe an opening live from the arena, something to do with this Stampede. I also predict that if we see any live videos from the Coliseum, you're going to see a bigger crowd. This thing is just in the growing stages. We're 7 shows in. There are 25 total USA shows. So each one are going to get bigger and better. And Coliseum crowds are going to grow significantly. By the last show, when they show that Coliseum crowd, if they do, I don't even remember if I had left the company immediately following, that Coliseum is practically full.
Yeah.
25 weeks after the first matches. So that's a pretty good growth for the company, and 25 shows to go from a very small crowd in the Coliseum to practically filling the building.
Sure.
So,
and that's the whole story behind why the TVs are the way they are, is to try to build the crowd each week and get them to come out and buy tickets.
That's why we talk about these we do these recall rewinds. And so let's take just a couple of minutes here, Les, to talk about an event that is really, it's taken off. I mean, I talked to you first about, this dinner with the stud, and, and we didn't, you liked the idea, but we didn't know what to expect. Right?
No.
So we found out at this point, we're about to, basically, by the time this airs, we're going to be just a little less than 2 weeks before the event itself. And we have sold a considerable amount of tickets. We're going to be in a beautiful restaurant. This dinner is going to be on Wednesday night, October the 13th. It's going to start at 7 o'clock. It's going to go to about 9. It could go to about 9:15. And we're going to have a live studcast there. We're going to have a question and answer session after the studcast for probably 45 minutes or an hour. We're going to greet all these fans when they come in.
Yeah, everybody's going to hang out. We're not going to be inaccessible. We're going to hang out with you, and plus this meal. Calhoun's noted for their barbecue, and so you've got, besides the barbecue, baked beans, coleslaw, rolls, iced tea, lemonade for the meal, and then of course
it's a buffet.
Yeah,
I mean, you can
go back as often as you want,
many times as you want.
And they own a cash bar, so if you want alcohol, that'll be available to you as well. But what we got here, we keep mentioning door prizes, okay? So we wanted to show you some of the stuff that'll be in the door prizes. First of all, is this mask is the Tennessee Stud mask, and one of those will go to a lucky winner whose number gets drawn. And what's the value on that? What's that sell for?
$40.
$40.
Okay, this T-shirt down here, it's this original Southeastern Championship Wrestling logo on the orange that the original set was. These would sell for $25. So that would be one of the door prizes.
Now here, for those who don't know, real quick, Pillman Memorial shows. This is the anthology 20-year anniversary. When Brian Pillman passed away, I ran 4 benefit shows for his family, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. And the unique part about those shows, the only place in the world, let me repeat that, the only place in the world that you could see WCW talent, ECW talent, and WWF talent all under the same roof on the same night. Any place in the world at these shows. So another door, this is a $30 value.
Hold it up there so they can see it.
This is
There you go.
this is a $30 value. There are 4 discs covering each one of those shows with interviews. There's all kinds of extras on here, and 15 hours of content on this. And to go with that on the door prize, this program is from the 2000 Pillman show. Unless you bought one in 2000 at that show, or you stole one out of my house, which I've got about a dozen of these left. This is the only place you're going to get this thing. And so it is a collector's item. These will go together. That's a $50 value. That's one of the door prizes. And then these 2 magazines these are the start of the magazines I did for Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling in the 70s. This was the first little program. This is the way it started. This is when we started getting a little fancier. And these sell for $25 a pop. And the more fancy ones and the more, obviously the harder they are to come by, the more expensive they become. This cover I want to mention, that statue is on my coffee table right now, but what makes this really a nice collector's item is that if you happen to have seen last year the Ric Flair 30 by 30 on ESPN, is this photo coverage that I shot a day with Rick out with the girls, was part of that. So that makes it.
And I'd like to. The picture on the back here happens to be one of the toughest son of a guns that ever wore a pair of tights, man.
Oh yeah,
Johnny
yes.
Valentine.
He said they may not believe wrestling, but they'll believe me, and you ain't wrong.
Yeah.
When you mention Valentine, my sternum still vibrates from his forearms. Believe me. Yeah. So anyway, that's a $50, and that's going to be a door prize. We've got a couple other door prizes coming as well.
Miller Beer is going to
Cherokee
be.
Distributing is
Cherokee Distributing is going to be giving away a door prize, and we'll have one more door prize beyond that, and we're all going to get. Everybody's going to get 2 free autographed photos. One of you, and one of me. And I've got to remind everybody, if you haven't heard, that Jimmy Golden is not going to be on this first one. He's having a little minor medical procedure, and they happen to put it on that day. So we're going to have Dr. Tom Pritchard,
right,
who was a great Continental star, and who trains wrestlers today in Knoxville, Tennessee,
right,
to this day, and he has a partner in that happened to be a big star for WWE.
The mayor of Knoxville.
The mayor of Knoxville.
Glenn Jacobson Kane.
Kane. So, there's going to be a tremendous event, and you can get tickets by just going to my website, which is tnstud.com. Click on the stud store, and I think it's the first thing that comes up. You'll see the dinner with the stud, and they're $30. The 2 photos that we're going to give to everybody free is a $30 value. And these things like the door prizes, all of that is added to it, and free
plus the meal and
live studcast, live question and answer session. Going to be a unique event, and please, if you're interested, you live around Knoxville. Oddly enough, Les, we have someone coming from Seattle, and 2 people from Louisiana.
All right.
So we've got people coming from all over the country coming to Knoxville. And if you've not been to Knoxville during mid-October, that in itself is worth the trip. It is just absolutely.
Go to the mountains and look at the leaves.
Look at the leaves.
Yes.
It's just that.
Yes.
So, if you're considering it, you've got until October the 11th to get your ticket reservations in, to get your tickets. And please come visit with us.
Yeah, come
and
hang
have
out.
a great night with us. Hang out.
Exactly.
And I guess that's it for this week, and we'll see you next week for USA TV number 8.